The town of Eldridge had always been shrouded in shadows, a place where whispers carried on the wind and secrets lay buried beneath layers of time. At the edge of town stood the Larkins estate, a crumbling relic surrounded by gnarled trees and an unkempt garden. Once a vibrant home, it had become a haunting reminder of the family that vanished without a trace decades ago. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about the house of the chilling laughter that sometimes echoed from within and the eerie glow that flickered in its windows at night. One fog-laden evening, a group of 4 friends, Alex, Sarah, Mark and Jenna, decided it was time to confront the tales head-on. Tired of the rumours that sent shivers down their spines, they armed themselves with flashlights, bravado masking their hashing's prehension. The air was thick with unease, and as they approached the house, the atmosphere shifted. It felt as though the very shadows were watching them. Breath. The front door hung slightly ajar, as if inviting them in or warning them away. Mark, the most adventurous of the group, pushed the door open wider. It creaked ominously, revealing a dark hallway lined with peeling wallpaper and remnants of a forgotten life. Dust motes danced in the beams of their flashlights, swirling like tiny spectres in the heavy silence. "Let's explore," Mark said, his voice echoing in the stillness. They stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath their feet. Jenna felt an odd mix of excitement and dread as they moved deeper into the house. With each step, the air grew heavier, almost as if the house was alive, breathing around them. Up the staircase, they found a series of closed doors, each one a portal to the past. Jenna pushed open the first door, revealing a bedroom shrouded in darkness. The furniture was covered in white sheets, ghostly shapes in the dim light, and in the corner sat a cracked mirror that reflected only shadows. As they moved deeper into the room, something on the floor caught Jenna's eye, a porcelain doll, its glassy eyes wide and unblinking, dressed in a tattered lace gown. "Who?" "That's creepy," Sarah said, stepping back, a shiver coursing through her. Jenna knelt down, entranced by the doll's vacant stare. "It's kind of beautiful, in a strange way." Mark picked it up, turning it over in his hands. "We should take it. It'll be a great story to tell." Despite Jenna's unease, the others encouraged Mark, and after a moment's hesitation, she reluctantly agreed. The doll felt strangely warm, as if it held a lingering life force. They continued their exploration, moving from room to room, but a sense of being watched grew stronger with each passing moment. As they ventured into a larger room, once a nursery, Jenna felt an odd pull towards the window. She glanced outside, the fog swirling like restless spirits. A chill ran down her spine as she thought she saw a figure standing just beyond the trees, but when she blinked, it was gone. "Jenna, come look at this." Sarah's voice broke through her thoughts. In the centre of the nursery stood an old crib, its wood darkened with age. Stuffed animals littered the floor, their glassy eyes reflecting the flashlight beams. As they gathered closer, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that the room was alive with sorrow, an echo of laughter that felt like a ghostly lament. "Let's get out of here," Jenna urged, her heart racing. The atmosphere felt oppressive, the shadows thicker than before. As they turned to leave, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Panic flooded the room, and Jenna felt her stomach drop. The air crackled with energy, and the whispers began soft at first, then rising in a frenzied chorus. "Help us, help us." "Open the door," Alex shouted, rattling the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, twisting into a cacophony of desperate cries. Suddenly, the doll slipped from Mark's grasp, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. The moment it landed, the shadows in the room twisted and writhed, and for an instant, Jenna thought she saw faces emerge hollow, anguished expressions that sent chills racing through her. "Run!" Jenna screamed, and they all surged toward the door, but as they reached for the handle, it twisted open with a malicious creak. The hallway stretched before them, darker than before, shadows creeping along the walls. As they raced down the stairs, Jenna glanced back. The doll was gone, but a chilling laughter echoed in the air, wrapping around her like a shroud. Outside, the fog had thickened, swirling around them in a ghostly embrace. They sprinted toward the woods, the whispers trailing behind them like a dark cloud. "Help us, stay, join us." Once they reached the tree line, they collapsed, gasping for breath, hearts pounding. The oppressive weight of the house lifted slightly, but the atmosphere remained charged with unease. "What the hell just happened?" Alex gasped, wiping sweat from his brow. "We have to leave this place," Jenna said, her voice trembling. "We shouldn't have taken that doll." Mark scoffed, but there was a nervous edge to his tone. "It's just a stupid doll." But as they turned to head back into town, Jenna noticed something glimmering in the darkness. There, at the edge of the woods, stood the doll, its eyes shimmering with an unnatural light. "No," she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. With a burst of adrenaline, they ran, stumbling through the underbrush, until they reached the safety of the streetlights. As they crossed the threshold back into town, they felt an eerie stillness settle over them. The whispers faded, but an unsettling feeling lingered. In the days that followed, the experience haunted them. Jenna found it impossible to sleep, the image of the doll's unblinking eyes etched into her mind. Each night she lay awake, listening for sounds of movement outside her window, convinced the darkness was alive. One stormy night, the power went out, plunging her room into darkness. As she fumbled for her flashlight, a knock echoed from her window. Heart pounding, she crept towards it, her breath quickening with every step. She peeked through the curtain and gasped. There, illuminated by flashes of lightning, was the doll standing upright on the windowsill, its eyes glowing eerily. A cold dread gripped her heart, and she stumbled back, bumping into her desk. "No, this can't be real," she muttered to herself. The whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around her like a tempest. "Join us, stay with us." Panic surged through her. She turned and fled into the hallway, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness. But as she ran, she felt an icy hand grasp her ankle, pulling her down. She hit the floor hard, the air knocked from her lungs. Jenna screamed, but no one came. Struggling against the invisible grip, she clawed her way toward the stairs, the whispers rising in a crescendo. "Stay, stay." Just as she reached the bottom step, a figure emerged from the shadows, a small child, eyes wide and hollow, the same glassy stare as the doll. "Help us," the child whispered, voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. Jenna's heart raced as she scrambled back. "Get away from me." The child stepped closer, and behind it, the other figures emerged from the darkness, faces twisted in despair, their bodies spectral and pale. They surrounded her, whispering in unison, their voices a chilling melody that sent waves of terror through her. "Stay with us." In a final act of desperation, Jenna threw herself toward the front door. It swung open, revealing the storm outside. Rain poured down, drenching her instantly, but she didn't care. She bolted into the night, the cold air slicing through her like a knife. The whispers faded as she ran, but the weight of their gaze lingered. She dashed through the streets, not stopping until she reached her friend's house. Panting, she pounded on the door until Alex opened it, confusion etched on his face. "Jenna, what's wrong?" "They're coming for me," she gasped, fear spilling over. As she stumbled inside, she glanced back at the darkened street. The fog had rolled in thick, a living entity that seemed to pulse with a sinister life of its own. "Who's coming?" Alex asked, worry creeping into his voice. "The doll, the whispers, the children," she stammered. "They want me to stay." They huddled together, the oppressive darkness pressing in from all sides. Hours passed, each creak of the house amplified in the stillness. Finally, exhausted, they fell into a restless sleep, but the night was far from over. In the early hours of dawn, Jenna awoke to a soft rustling. The sound crept through the shadows, wrapping around her like a serpent. She sat up, heart racing, and saw the doll again, this time on the floor, its glassy eyes reflecting the first light of morning. "No," she whispered, backing away. But it was too late. The doll began to rise, its movements jerky and unnatural. Shadows danced around it, forming shapes that twisted and turned, echoing the whispers that had haunted her dreams. "Stay, help us." Jenna's scream cut through the morning stillness, and the figures lunged toward her, a torrent of anguish and despair. She bolted toward the door, but as she turned the handle, it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through her veins. In a desperate attempt, she hurled herself against the door, pushing with all her might. It finally gave way, and she stumbled outside, the chill of dawn biting at her skin. She ran, not looking back, the whispers echoing in her ears. As she reached the edge of the woods, the fog rolled in thick, enveloping her like a shroud. The last thing she heard before she fell into darkness was the voice of the child, sweet and sorrowful, "Join us." Days turned into weeks, but Jenna never returned. The whispers of Eldridge continued to swirl, tales of the girl who ventured too close to the Larkins estate. The house remained silent, but the doll, with its glassy eyes, waited patiently, watching for the next group of brave souls willing to cross its threshold. Time passed, and the town slowly adjusted to the absence of Jenna, yet a lingering tension hung in the air. The whispers became softer, almost like a memory, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy. But for Alex, Sarah, and Mark, the weight of that fateful night loomed over them like a dark cloud. They often gathered, sharing stories to distract themselves from the haunting thoughts of their friend. One crisp autumn evening, they sat in Alex's living room, remnants of a half-hearted attempt at a movie night playing in the background. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken fears, and as the shadows flickered across the walls, Sarah broke the silence. "We can't just forget about her," she said, her voice trembling. "What if she's still out there?" Mark shifted uncomfortably. "What do you propose we do? Go back to the house?" "That's insane." "But we owe it to her," Sarah insisted. "If we can find the doll, maybe we can find her." Jenna's absence weighed heavily on them, but the idea of returning to the Larkins estate sent chills down their spines. They exchanged nervous glances, but the urge to uncover the truth, to bring Jenna back, was undeniable. The next day they set out. The fog rolled in as they approached the estate, the trees looming like silent sentinels, a sense of dread wrapped around them, thickening the air. They stood at the door, heartbeats echoing in the stillness, but determination pushed them forward. Inside, the house was just as they had left it, haunted and alive. They navigated the familiar rooms, the darkness swallowing their flashlights' beams. Each creak of the floorboards echoed their apprehension. As they made their way upstairs, the air grew colder, and the shadows deepened. "Where do we even start?" Mark asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The nursery," Jenna said, recalling the heart of their fear. "That's where it all happened." They entered the nursery, and the familiar feeling of sorrow washed over them. It was as if the room was holding its breath, waiting. In the corner stood the old crib, now more decrepit than before, its paint peeling like the remnants of a long-lost childhood. As they scoured the room, Sarah found herself drawn to the window. "Look!" she cried, pointing. The fog had thickened outside, swirling in a way that seemed almost alive. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught Jenna's eye. "Over there!" she shouted, racing towards a shadow at the edge of the room. But as she reached out, it evaporated into mist, leaving her grasping at nothingness. "Did you see that?" she gasped. "What was it?" Mark asked, unease settling in his stomach. "It felt like a presence," she stammered, glancing back at the others. "I think it wants us to find something." Just then, the whispers returned, a soft murmur that filled the room, wrapping around them like a ghostly embrace. "Help us, join us." Panic surged, but Jenna forced herself to concentrate. "The doll. We have to find it." They scoured the nursery, searching beneath the floorboards, inside the closet, everywhere they could think. Then, Sarah's flashlight beam fell upon a corner they had missed, a pile of old toys, dusty and forgotten. Among them lay the doll, its glassy eyes gleaming with an unearthly light. "Here it is," Sarah exclaimed, reaching out to grab it, but as her fingers brushed its surface, a chill rippled through the air, and the whispers grew louder. "No," Jenna cried, but it was too late. The doll began to shake, and the room was suddenly filled with shadows, figures twisting and writhing, their anguished faces emerging from the walls, filling the room with their mournful wails. "Stay with us. Join us." In a frenzy, they dropped the doll and backed away. "What do we do?" Mark shouted, fear flooding his voice. Jenna felt an overwhelming surge of responsibility. "We have to destroy it," she yelled, grabbing a nearby heavy lamp. "It's the source of this." As she swung the lamp at the doll, the shadows converged, a force pushing back against her. "No, stay with us." Mark rushed to her side, grabbing the lamp as well. "We can't let it take us." Together they raised the lamp and brought it crashing down onto the doll. The porcelain shattered, and a piercing wail erupted from the shadows, as if the house itself was screaming. The room shook violently, shadows swirling into a vortex. The whispers turned into cries of rage and despair, and Jenna felt a darkness pressing in on her from all sides. The walls shuddered, as though the house was about to collapse. "Run," Alex shouted, and they bolted for the door, pushing against the torrent of shadows that clawed at them. The house roared, the very foundation trembling as they raced down the stairs. Jenna glanced back one last time, seeing the shadows swirling in a chaotic dance, desperately reaching for them. They burst through the front door, just as the house shuddered violently, the last vestiges of its malevolence collapsing behind them. The fog enveloped them again, but this time it felt lighter, as if the darkness had finally been lifted. Gasping for breath, they stumbled away from the estate, the distant cries fading into silence. As they reached the safety of the street, the weight that had burdened them for so long began to dissipate. "We did it," Sarah panted, disbelief mingling with relief. But Jenna's gaze lingered on the house, feeling a strange emptiness settle over her. But what about Jenna? In the weeks that followed, the town returned to a sense of normalcy. The air felt cleaner, the shadows less foreboding. Yet, despite their victory, a lingering emptiness filled the void where their friend once stood. Then, one night, as they gathered to reminisce, a soft knock echoed from Alex's window. Their hearts raced as they turned, and to their horror, they saw the doll, the same porcelain figure, now cracked and splintered, but undeniably alive. Its eyes shimmered in the dark, reflecting an unfathomable sorrow. "What? How?" Mark stammered, fear coursing through him. The whispers returned, softer this time, but undeniably present. "Help us, join us." "No," Sarah shouted, but the words fell flat against the looming dread. The air thickened, heavy with the weight of loss and longing. Jenna had not returned, but a part of her would forever linger within the shadows, bound to the whispers and the doll's glassy gaze. And as the friends stood frozen in fear, they realized the truth. In Eldridge, darkness never truly disappeared, it merely waited, watching, and longing for the next soul willing to cross its threshold. The doll's eyes gleamed in the dark, a promise of companionship for anyone who dared to take it home. And so the cycle would continue, a relentless dance between light and dark, the whispers forever echoing in the shadows. As the days turned into nights, strange occurrences began to plague the friends. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision, whispers echoed through their thoughts, and an oppressive heaviness filled the air. They could feel it, a malevolent presence lingering just out of sight, an unshakable reminder of the past they thought they had left behind. One evening, Sarah sat alone in her room, the weight of solitude pressing down on her. As she glanced at her reflection in the mirror, she thought she saw Jenna standing behind her, pale and sorrowful, lips moving silently as if trying to speak. Heart racing, Sarah spun around, but there was no one there. Just the echo of whispers growing louder, more insistent. "Help us. Stay." Frantic, she called the others. "We need to meet." It's happening again. Gathering in Alex's living room, they shared their experiences, each tale more chilling than the last. Mark, usually the bravest, now trembled at the thought of the doll. "We can't let it win," Jenna said, her voice firm despite the fear bubbling within her. "We have to find out what it wants." Determined, they decided to research the Larkins family, hoping to uncover the dark history that bound the doll to the house. They pored over old newspapers, records, and town legends, uncovering tales of tragedy, loss, and a family torn apart by grief. As they dug deeper, they learned that the doll had belonged to the youngest Larkin child, a girl who had vanished without a trace. The whispers they heard weren't merely cries for help, they were the echoes of lost souls trapped in a cycle of despair, yearning for release. Driven by desperation, they returned to the estate, determined to confront the darkness head-on. As they stepped through the door, the air crackled with energy, and the shadows whispered their haunting chorus verse, urging them deeper into the heart of the house. In the nursery, the air felt charged, a palpable energy swirling around them. They stood together, hands clasped, as they spoke the name of the lost child, invoking her spirit, hoping to offer her the solace she had never found. "Lily," Jenna called, her voice steady. "We're here for you. We want to help." The room grew cold, and the shadows twisted in response. A soft glow emanated from the corner, revealing the doll once more, this time surrounded by a halo of light. It hovered, a delicate thread connecting the living and the dead, a bridge across the chasm of grief. As they reached out toward the doll, a flood of memories washed over them, images of a lonely child, lost and afraid, echoes of laughter turned to sobs. They could feel the pain, the longing, and the deep-rooted sorrow that had kept Lily bound to this world. In that moment they understood. It wasn't just the doll that needed to be freed. It was Lily herself, trapped in a cycle of despair. They focused their energy, pouring love and compassion into the space around them. "Lily, you don't have to be alone anymore," Jenna whispered. "You can let go. We're here for you." As if sensing their intent, the shadows began to retreat, the whispers morphing into a soft melody. The doll floated higher, its porcelain surface shimmering with ethereal light. In a final surge of energy, they channeled their emotions, releasing the burden that had shackled Lily for so long. The room erupted in a blinding flash, and for a moment, time stood still. When the light faded, the air felt lighter, the shadows less foreboding. In the center of the room lay the doll, now just an ordinary trinket, devoid of its malevolent energy. Breathless, they exchanged glances, relief washing over them. The whispers had ceased, the darkness lifted, they had broken the cycle. As they left the Larkins estate behind, a sense of peace enveloped them. The bond of friendship had triumphed over despair, and though Jenna was still gone, they felt her spirit with them, a quiet reminder of the importance of love, compassion, and the strength found in unity.